Chapter 13. How to select target journals. In the previous chapters, we have talked about the critical parts of academic paper, and the purpose of paper writing is to make it published. You need to figure out the proper journals to which you decide to submit your papers. Today, you will learn how to select journals and will select one for your article. A fact will be shown that many journals need you more than you need them. Every discipline has its own numerous academic journals worldwide, including active academic journals and active peer-reviewed academic journals. Every year, new academic journals are being published. Researchers and students are haunted by one puzzle. Although there are an increasing number of journals which are desperate to publish articles, and researchers are desperate to make papers published, rejection rates are high, and researchers are gradually discouraged by preferring to do experiments in labs rather than write papers. But I told you that the purpose of writing papers is to get them published. So, we need to explore what kind of papers do journals really need. Rejection rates are really so high as you imagine? In my research, I have found that unsolicited submissions by researchers are popular in their fields. So, it's not always the journals that have higher rejection rates, but it's to some extent that researchers are not sure of the requirements of journals, and they are afraid of waiting for a long time with the results of being rejected. Given these facts, you first have the solid research and solid writing of your submission, which is a primary stage of paper publication. Next, you will work on the second most important thing you can do, picking the right journal. Because without the proper journals, even though your research and writing are advanced and strong, the possibility of your paper being rejected is extremely high. According to my experience, many researchers decide on which journal they will submit papers to before writing papers. The costs of choosing the wrong journal are quite high. One of the most frequent reasons why a paper is rejected is that it did not meet that specific journal's requirements. I will list out several situations where your papers will likely be rejected. Of course, this kind of situation is definite that your research is worthless and meaningless. Your writing style is not what journals need. Before your well-written articles are submitted to journals, they have just published similar papers on the same topic, or they have a large number of other papers on the waiting list, or have a theoretical emphasis your papers lack. Most of these are not always clarified in a rejection letter, but usually there is nothing intrinsically wrong with your paper, while it simply does not fit the journal's mandate. The editor may express reasons of rejection in such ways as, "It wasn't so proper for us," or "It was too long or too short, too qualitative or too quantitative, too narrow or too broad, too theoretical or too concrete," and so on and so forth. But all these comments really mean the same thing. Our journals won't publish papers like this. However, maybe your papers fit for other journals, so it is important for you to read and comprehend actual peer-reviewed journals. In this way, you could get informed of what is editors or reviewers really prefer. Remember, it's not a feasible and a practical way to submit your papers to whichever journal without any discrimination. Rejection is not the only cost of picking the wrong journal. In the academic world, you are forbidden to simultaneously submit your article to dozens of journals. Once you make the submission, the only thing you can do is to wait until you get a decision from the first journal before submitting it to next journal. You know, it usually takes 3 to 12 months for review. So choosing the wrong journal can significantly delay publication. There is a possibility for the data of your experiments to be released, which means the efforts you made in your research previously will be wasted. Therefore, indiscriminately submitting papers to journals in your discipline without carefully considering your options is not a wise strategy for those starting out in their academic careers. You cannot think paper submission to any kind of journals is the same. There are great differences between journals. Most universities reward only those papers appearing in refereed academic journals. But not all academic journals are refereed, which means the quality control mechanism of peer review is not always applied. What does peer review mean? Manuscripts are sent for vetting to scholars in the field, usually anonymously. This process is also known as anonymous or blind review if the author does not know the reviewer, but the reviewer knows the author, or double-blind review if neither knows each other. This criterion is not available to the publication in conference proceedings, anthologies, or other collections. So, how do you go about picking the right journal from numerous ones? I suggest that you figure out types of journals in your discipline and do research on them by studying their features, including writing format, style, target readers, and so on. And then aim at those which could be your possible publication outlets. You need to think about your aims in paper publishing. Since you are at an early stage or important stage of your career, your main aim of paper publication is to get you promoted and establish your influence in a certain field, which could help you to win the respect from your peers or even other scholars. During your study, you possibly have some good ideas or insights. In such a case, you may want the points to be published in a peer-reviewed journal. Maybe it's not a first-rate journal. The key is to communicate an idea to readers who are not only your partners, but also those beyond your discipline. For students, like most of you, publication of papers is a guarantee for your graduation. So, sometimes they desire to transfer their lab experiment data to papers and get into print quickly. Variation of your purposes does shape the level of journals you select. Then I will talk about types of academic journals. Academic journals are defined as periodicals that publish collections of scholarly paper in different fields. According to the definition of American Library Association in 1983, a periodical is a serial appearing or intended to appear indefinitely at regular intervals, generally more frequently than annually. Each issue of which is numbered or dated consecutively and normally contains separate articles, stories, or other writings. Let's go through the evolution of academic journals. In the 17th century, some intellectuals sent handwritten correspondence about their findings of the day to other scholars. This kind of handwritten correspondence is a regional form of academic journals. When such correspondence later could no longer keep pace with the scientific developments of the era, serials appeared in Germany, France, England, and Italy. By the end of the 1700s, journals have become more specialized, and by the end of 1800s, illustrations, references, methodologies, and peer review had become standard practice. practice. This origin of journal in letter writing still shape the form. Academic journals are records of scholarly conversations and current concerns. It is smart to remember this origin when writing. To submit an article to an academic journal is to begin a correspondence. It is important to know the difference between types of journals, which can effectively help you determine the best journal for your work and can aid you in revising your paper. I will tell you some standard types of publishing outlets for papers. Some journals are not proper for you to publish in. Some journals are those you should think twice about publishing in. And some journals are really those you should prefer. First, are non-recommended publishing outlets. With your purposes of establishing your status in the academic world, newspapers and magazines are not proper. A newspaper or magazine is any popular periodical that never publishes articles or papers with citations. Newspapers disseminate news on a broad range of topics. Magazines are more specific topics. Articles in newspapers, magazines, or newsletters can do a good job of getting your name out there and changing the world we live in. But do not win much with hiring committees, even though you will claim that it is harder to publish articles in some magazines, like National Geography or newspapers like China Daily, than in some academic journals. In experts' eyes, many journalists do not have credentials in the field about which they are writing, and so cite information second or third hand. Articles in newspapers or magazines are seen as too short to do justice to the complexity of the issue and have conclusions that are too simple or shallow. Newspapers and magazines live on advertisements to stay in business. So, academics cast doubt on their impartiality. In short, their authority and legitimacy are not sufficient for your purposes. News and information journals. These periodicals publish news articles and announcements for a particular academic field or profession. Their content may include updates on trends in the field, opinion pieces, review articles, conference reports, book reviews, abstracts of peer-reviewed literature, job announcements, and grant deadlines. They may publish excerpts from forthcoming books, which is useful to remember. But such journals do not publish research articles and are not peer-reviewed. The Chronicle of Higher Education, for instance, provides news to university faculty and administrators every week. Such journals are often written by staff, writers, and so are really looking for submissions by academics. you should not consider such a journal for your article. Trade and professional journals. These periodicals publish articles on the technical or practical aspects of performing in a particular field or profession. They tend to be more common in scientific or professional fields such as engineering, medicine, business, or architecture, education, design, or archaeology. The articles are not peer-reviewed without references, written in an informal, more accessible style for practitioners. These journals often include many field-related announcements regarding conferences, calls for papers, jobs, new technology, and so on. They do not, however, publish peer-reviewed articles if you are not writing an article intended to instruct others in your field about how to do something well, such as how to record good oral histories or make movies. Such journals are not for you. Sometimes, however, peer-reviewed journals are miscategorized as trade journals. So, if you find a trade journal you like, you need to check if it is actually an academic journal. For instance, College Composition and Communication is a trade journal that publishes peer-reviewed articles on writing pedagogy.